All right, so this is being recorded. So we have motive, and then we have subsequent motives, and we notice that they're both rhythmically related and melodically related. Both the motive is rhythmic and melodic, in that it is a motive that has a lower neighbor tone, and it's also a rhythmic motive. All right, so that takes care of motive. Motive is the most common concept in melodic writing. Figure out something that's catchy and use it frequently. Motives can be extremely simple. All right, so if I go over to the piano here, real simple motive. Okay, so we have, so la da da. It's clipping. Let me set this differently. All right. La da dum, da da dum, da da dum. So we have la da da, repeat the motive, and then develop the motive. All right? So this is a great example. Another example might be the melody's not that interesting, except for the end of the melody. La da 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 dee da dee da 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 da. That's where the energy is. La da 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 dee da dee da 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 dum. La da dee da 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 da. Again, not very interesting. La da dee da 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 da. But Beethoven's able to figure out a way to create interest by using a rhythmic motif. I don't have my camera flipper, so you're gonna have to watch me kind of go back and forth here. What's 1, 2, 3 all about?
Oh, that was the page number.
Oh,
Someone
okay.
asked.
Oh, what page number? Sorry. From my camera perspective, it looked like LOL, which means something completely different. And then I get over where I could see the chat, and then I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3. What does that mean? Okay. So the next couple of pages, flesh out what is the rhythmic and what is the melodic motive. And so this is kind of cool how they show you this. In figure 6.2, they show you a melody. In this case, it's a folk tune that's in multiple meters, which is interesting in and of itself. But then they show you how if you strip away the pitches and you just look at what the rhythm is, you can see how it's repeated and used this way. He also does that with this Copeland example, the Appalachian Spring example, whereas we have the rhythm is, the pitches are distilled away, and we're left with the rhythm, and we see that there's a rhythmic pattern that occurs. Even though the pitches are different, the rhythm is still cohesive throughout. All right? That's pretty cool, if you ask me. So you can see this measure here. Each measure has the same rhythmic pattern, but the pitches are unique. That's the signature of a really fine composer that can find a way to make interesting music, but hang it together with a motive. All right. We also see rhythmic motives that are not associated with melodic lines. Okay, in figure 6.3, we have this Mendelssohn example, and with the Mendelssohn example, we can see the rhythmic motif is actually in the accompaniment pattern. We see this regular accompaniment. And that is such a common thing for a rhythm section to have kind of a groove. And we think of this more as a groove, that the rhythmic driving element is going to be regular. And so we see that in these two examples. I'm going to keep moving here because we got a lot to do. We'll see more of these examples later. Okay, the next section gets into this whole business of sequence. Okay, a sequence. I'm going to go to the piano and play some sequences here. The idea behind sequences is that we're going to take a motive and we're going to repeat it at a different pitch level. All right, and we can see an example, figure 6.4. We have a sequence. Let's listen to this. I'm going to go to the piano to play this. So let's do that. And that's not the piano. Sequences. Okay, so this is from S9. So we can hear
I can't really hear the piano audio.
all right,
None of us can.
How about now?
Better. Yep.
Okay, so the sequence segment so the little motif is then repeated a step higher. All right, so in this case, what this is Beethoven, Symphony Number 9. What he does is he takes the motive na da dee da and he transposes it up a step, and he keeps the intervals all the same. This is called a real sequence. If he didn't keep all the intervals the same, listen to the change. This is what he wrote. If he follows the key, yuck, it doesn't make sense. Because what he's trying to do is elevate. Okay? Real sequences will change the key as the sequence is progressing. Okay? We've just modulated up a step. All right? That's a great technique, because otherwise what you have is just sort of sleepy and flat. Okay? Most sequences do not do this. A real sequence which modulates the key and steps up as it goes is very difficult to write. Most sequences go like this. They follow the key. Those are called tonal sequences. Let's get that language down. All right. We'll go over to the board here. We got to do some erasing, but that's fine. And we've got that. Here we are. Earlier today, we were working on variations, which is kind of exciting, if you like variations. This is terrible. This is why I don't like whiteboards, folks. They smear, they make a mess. Chalkboards are the way to go. All right, good enough. Plus you need markers. Okay, so in your notes, please get this down. Okay, the topic here, it's a major topic here. Sequence. Sequence. Okay, what is a sequence? It's a repeating pattern at different pitch levels. Okay, repeating pattern at different pitch levels. Yes, chalkboards. All right, marker boards. All right, sequence. Repeating pattern, different pitch levels. There's two types, real versus tonal. Okay, a real sequence must have a consistent intervals. Okay, so real sequence must have a transposition transposed versus a tonal sequence which doesn't have to be transposed. It will follow the key. Okay, we're changing markers here. This thing is ridiculous. It could be the board. I've never had this problem. Squeaky marker syndrome. Okay, I'll look at the chat in a second. Okay, real, transposed, tonal follow the key. Real sequences are difficult. Tonal sequences are easy. Okay, a real sequence, only a great composer can really accomplish this effectively, especially with a large ensemble composition. Anyone can write a tonal sequence. As a matter of fact, you could probably sing a tonal sequence, just come up with the motive. La-da-dum, 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 la-da-dum. Your auditory cortex will naturally follow a major key as it begins to transpose it, as it begins to sequence it. But to actually transpose it requires you to really think about what the intervals are. All right, so let's see if we can write a tonal sequence, and then see if we can turn it into a real sequence. So we'll get rid of all this. And actually write a little melody. All right, let's do that. We won't even use a key signature. We'll just, mark some pitches down. Okay, so mi, re, do, fa, mi, re, do, fa, mi, re. When we look at this here and I analyze the intervals, it's actually just follows the key. Okay, so we have a major second. In the next instance of the motif, we have a minor second and then a major second. All right, so in the first motif, we have a major second. In the second motif, we have a minor second. So in order to make this into a real sequence, we need to change this to a major second. In order to do that, there's a couple ways that could go. I can sharp the F. Now it's a major second. Okay? Originally, mi, re, do, fa, mi, re. Now we have mi, re, do, fi, re, mi. Okay, now it's a real sequence. The other way that could have gone is this way, which gets really bizarre. If we take this away and put it up here, let's actually go here. Okay, so now we have major second, minor second. Okay, let's listen to this. Actually follows the C major triad. But if I make it into a real sequence, I have to flat that in order to make it a major second. All right? So the problem with real sequences, if you have a real sequence, you're going to spin yourself out of the key and eventually have to come back. So again, that takes an incredible craft. So if you're going to write a sequence, you have to decide. Do you want to write a real sequence, or do you want to write a tonal sequence? Tonal is easy, follows the key. Real sequences will take you away from the key because you have to add accidentals in order to make it conform to the original interval pattern. All right, let's get back to the chat here. Okay, so we have some comments about chalkboards. Trust me, my colleagues that have dropped their chalkboards in favor of whiteboards want their chalkboards back. There's a certain rhythm to writing on a chalkboard that you do not get with a whiteboard. Whiteboards are like, it's like K-pop or something like that. It feels superficial when you're writing on it. Chalkboard feels like you're actually doing something. Okay, it feels almost musical. It is hard to write left-handed. I've also heard that. But with time, you learn to adapt to it. Excuse me. I love ginger ale. Okay. So, moving onward. Questions about sequences? Comments? Thoughts? When it comes to sequences, we talk about sequences in terms of segments. All right, so we have some examples here. That's my chalkboard example. When it comes to sequences, we think of them in segments, that we have each repeated motif or motive is considered to be a segment. So we have segment 1, segment 2. Most sequences will have at minimum 2 segments, but usually not more than 4. So the segments that we see here, there are 2 segments in both of these. So they show you a real and tonal sequence. Now then, we also have some other kinds of sequences. We have modified sequences, whereas you might see modified sequences are carefully disguised. So here you can see there's a simple 3-note pattern, but then that 3-note pattern is disguised within these triplets. So we have that. Composers love to play games with what I'm going to call variation techniques. In this case, CPE box sets up an expectation for a 3-note pattern and then disguises that 3-note pattern in a clever rhythmic way. Okay, that's a modified sequence. Again, the segments can be identified. And then we have this term false sequence. False sequence. So in this case, we have a sequence that happens with this intermediary repetition, whereas the intervals are not the same. So you have fourths and thirds that are integrated within the pattern. Let's listen to that. It's weird. It's really weird to think of it as a sequence. All right, we have one more topic after this, and then we'll be able to do our assignment. All right, so here's your false sequence. All right, so we have this. So you could probably hear that it's kind of sequential, but it's not really, it's not really a sequence that is, I don't hear it as a sequence. I hear it as related material. But when I look at it on paper, it's definitely a sequence. The other example he gives you is also Schubert. And then so this concept of sequence in the textbook, when we get deeper into it, is kind of elusive a little bit. It's kind of like these things are kind of related, and they're at different pitch levels, but is it really a sequence? Well, it could be a modified sequence. So it's kind of the get out of jail free card. Okay, then we get into phrase. All right, this is where we get kind of into our songwriting part. The Haydn Symphony example. Let's listen. He defines a phrase as being. He defines the phrase as being a. This is the book. A substantial musical thought, ending in a melodic or harmonic cadence. All right. So it's got to be some sort of thought that ends in a cadence. In this case, the example that he gives us. Ends with a half cadence. So the phrase itself is a complete thought, but it needs to have a more substantial unit of music in order to balance the equation. All right? So this is a phrase. It's not a complete unit. All right? A phrase is a substantial musical thought ending in a cadence, but not a complete unit. All right, so let's take a look at the next bit here. He describes what is called the phrase member. So the phrase member usually involves twofold repetition, which in ear training I described as something happens and then it's repeated. All right, twofold repetition. You love my example. Okay, so la da 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 da, la da 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 sequence, da 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 modified sequence. The example that he gives us for 6.9 is repeated. Okay, that's the oldest trick in the book. Make a statement and then repeat it. That is super easy because it's like cut and paste and cut and paste again, and that allows you to compose an incredibly large amount of music in a short period of time. The next example in the Haydn trio. You know, same thing. Haydn plays the same game. But within a phrase, you could also have contrasting elements. All right? Let's take a look at the board. Let's take a look at the board. And I would like to show you some ways that we can kind of get this into our notes. Into the notes we go. So we'll get rid of this, because now we're talking about this phrase. Okay, phrase. All right, so suppose we have 4 measures of music. So mark out 4 measures like this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. So measures 1 and 2 could go like this. We could have, we'll call it A, and then measures 3 and 4 could repeat that. Okay? In this case, we have a phrase member A, which is repeated as phrase member A. Okay? Very simple concept. La da dee da dee da dee da dum. La da dee da dee da dee da dum. We'll repeat it. Okay, this could also happen with lyrics. I was way downtrodden. I was way downtrodden. Okay, like in a blues, where you might repeat the lyric this way. Okay, so the idea is repetition. The alternative to that is to switch it up. On the second half of the phrase, do something different. All right? So, la da dee da dee da dee da dum, la da da dee 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 dum. Okay, still a cohesive unit with a cadence, but B sounds different. I was way downtrodden, on my way to heaven. Okay, still a phrase, but we have an A and a B both working together. So it's kind of cool. You could do this with lyrics, and you can do this with melody. You could also do this with harmony. You could do this with rhythm. All right? Very cool concept. So this is the idea. A phrase is a cohesive musical unit. Questions. Very cool topic. I get excited about this because this is the essence of composition, is trying to create cohesive units within phrases. What do you guys think? Zoomers? Thoughts? You can chat it out. I know you guys are writing music. Okay, so Kobe asked the question, do sequences need to be, do the segments need to be in consecutive order? That's a great question. And the answer is, when sequences emerged as a compositional device, they were used in sequential order. Do they have to be? No. We could identify sequences as being in different places. But the concept of sequence is to have them in sequential order, thus sequence. But you can have the concept of sequence can be moved around, if I can say that. The spirit of sequence doesn't necessarily have to be sequential. That's a great question. Okay, I'll move on to the next topic. The next topic, it gets better. It gets so much better. Okay. Sorry about the camera. The next topic is the period. Okay, so we can take phrases, and we can take phrases and layer them together to create even more substantial thoughts. These are called periods. All right, so let's get this out of here. And let's, in our notes, go to the next level, which is period. A period. Okay, just like a period of time. I mean, I remember being in high school and you'd have third period. And, so we're talking about a unit at a time. And so a period usually consists of two phrases. But it could be three and it could be four, as you'll see in your textbook. All right, so multiple phrases make up these things called periods. Let's keep it simple. Periods can either be parallel or they can be contrasting. And that's the essence of our assignment for today. Okay, parallel versus contrasting. If we have two phrases, can we tell if they're parallel or can we tell if they're contrasting? Best example, Calvin knows this already from earlier today because we were talking about it. Let me adjust my sound knob. I need my adjuster. There we go. Here we are. Okay, so the first phrase, stop. The second phrase was nearly identical to the first phrase, with the exception of one thing, the ending. La da 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 ends on re. La da 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 do. Okay, the idea here is that the first phrase is mostly the same as the second phrase. Therefore, we call that a parallel period. Two phrases, mostly identical. In this case, one ends on to, one ends on re, the second ends on do. Okay, if we think about Stephen Foster and we get into his mind a little bit, it's like he must have been thinking, I'm going to write la da 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 da. He didn't do this. La da 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 dee 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 dee, la da da dee dee dee. He didn't write something weird. He didn't write a contrasting period. Okay? He wrote a parallel period. Why did he do this? Because he wanted something that was catchy. He must have been listening to Beethoven. Right? Da 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 dee da dee da 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 dum. La da 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 dee da dee da 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 dum da dum. It's nearly the same tune. The difference is the key and the rhythm. Okay? So he takes the same structure, which is the concept of the parallel period, and he just changes the key, uses different rhythm, and somewhat of a different harmonic structure, but ultimately comes up with the same result. Okay? This is the beauty of the parallel period. The contrasting period, much more difficult to write, because the second phrase, you got to come up with something completely different that contrasts it enough to make it unique. All right. Which is more common, the parallel period or the contrasting period? Probably the parallel period, because it's much easier to write. All right. Let's take a look at our assignment, which is 6.1, which is kind of fun. Let's see who we have here. Okay, Theo, Joseph, Eric, Kobe, Jesse, Carson, Sam, Calvin, Lucas, Lane. Cool. All right. Page 139. And Gamila's question about the assignment sheet, there may be some page numbers that are slightly off, but generally speaking, we should be able to find things based on the heading, which in this case is 6.1. Eddie. All right. So what they're doing is they're asking us here, is a period formed? Do we have a parallel period or a contrasting period? If so, name the type. This is something we're really going to need to do by ear and by eye. Let's listen to number 1. I'll play number 1. And what I want you to do at home is listen and ask yourself, is a period formed? Is a period formed? Do you hear relational material between the two phrases? That's my big chair. I hate this chair. I'm getting a new chair. Anybody have a chair recommendation? All right. Yeah. Always strange. Zoom. All right, here we are. Number 1. Okay, let's listen to that again. All right, do we have a period? Do we have two phrases? Yes. Okay, yeah, now we're starting to get the hang of this. Yeah, just jump in there. La da da dum da da hum da da dee da dum. Definitely a stopping point right there, right? And then we start again. So if we number the measures, that can help. So number 1, the same as number 1. Number 2, the same as number 2. Number 3, the same as 3. And then where we get the number 3, mostly the same as number 3. And then number 4 is where we really get the big difference. Is a period formed? I would say yes. Is it parallel or contrasting? What do you guys think? Parallel or contrasting? Just chat that out. Okay, Joseph. Parallel. I agree. Why don't we try another one? I'll leave the score up and just go to the piano. Hmm. Interesting. Let's listen to that again. Then we're going to go back to the textbook and lawyer up on this. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, we've got some strong opinions here. No period. Well, let's take a look at the definition again of period. My chalkboard example was fairly simple. But if we look at the textbook, the definition of period, our accepted definition, the second phrase ends with a strong cadence, usually authentic. The first phrase ends with a weaker cadence than the second, usually a half cadence. The two phrases bear some musical relationship, often create a question-answer effect, sometimes called antecedent consequent. Let's focus on lawyering up on, yeah, right, Era. That. Let's look at the cadences. Okay, when we number off the measures, okay, the piece is in the key of D, all right? And so when we think about cadences, all right, we're going to go to the very end of the phrase. When I circle the last note, that note must be harmonized with a chord, okay? Harmonized with a chord. And if I understand the directions in the chapter to be correct, point number 1 and 2 are unequivocal. Unequivocal. If we look at the chord that finishes the phrase, it cannot be the tonic triad. It cannot be the tonic triad. No tonic. Therefore, it must be a half cadence or some other cadence type. So, just by looking at the directions that were given on page 129, the second phrase ends with a strong cadence. In this case, the second phrase ends with a weak cadence. Therefore, this is not a period. And Joseph and Gamila and Era and Sam, I think their spidey sense was right. And no. If not, explain why. Weak cadence. All right. That's a great music theory problem. All right. So we're using some basic instructions and taking into consideration some musical material and try to figure out, does it fit the criteria? And if it doesn't, the question is why. Always why. So you can go back to page 129 and see if that helps. Your assignment for Monday we're out, but Wednesday is to look at each of these and try to figure out, are these periods? And if not, why? If so, what type? Parallel or contrasting? And the key is in the cadence. At that point, we're out of time, but I appreciate all of your presence and effort to get to us here on this platform. Because we're a hybrid course, we have to do some material online, and I'd prefer to do it this way than just to cut people loose on D2L or whatever. It's much more fulfilling, I think, to see the material presented in some kind of a format than it is to simply read something out of the book and then cough up answers on a bubble sheet. All right, so you guys have a great weekend and have a good long weekend because you deserved it. It's a first week back to class and we're just trying to get our stuff together. So, all right, I'll see you guys later. You guys can drop out. I'm going to keep the window open.
Hi, sorry.
Sure.
If I understood correctly, did you say we weren't coming Monday?
Joseph, we are not here on Monday. It is celebration of Martin Luther King holiday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind your post office is closed too.
Yeah. Yeah, I got my book, as mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that's nice. All
Okay.
right. Well,
Anything else?
Possibly. I was just a little behind on the whole idea behind cadences, so I wanted to figure that out.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Look at chapter 5. It's pretty simple. There's only 4 types of cadences. You have the authentic cadence, which is a cadence when the phrase ends on the tonic chord. You have the half cadence where the phrase ends on the dominant chord. Those are the most 2 common cadences. And so when you're looking at a phrase, let me go over here. When you're looking at a phrase, if the phrase ends on the tonic chord, okay, let's think about the key of C. The tonic chord consists of these 3 notes. If the phrase ends on one of these 3 notes, then it's a authentic cadence.
Okay.
Okay? If it ends on one of these 3 notes, it's going to be a half. But we notice that the authentic cadence and the half cadence have 1 note in common. So you kind of have to think a little bit about which it could be. And what's going to happen is if you play it, your ear will likely tell you which one it is.
Okay.
If it sounds like it's not finished, it's probably...
Then it's probably a half.
Yeah. If
Okay.
it sounds like it's finished, it's probably authentic. Okay,
Sounds
so
good.
definition of period. The second phrase must have a stronger cadence than the first phrase, or equal cadences. Both phrases could have authentic cadences.
All right.
Does that clear it up a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm just still trying to figure out and like fully memorize, tonic and all that piece as well. So it's just like I'm a little behind in that regard, trying to figure out all the terms that are now applied. So, but I'm getting there. It's just gonna take a little time.
Go back to page 82. Remember chapter
Okay.
4. Chapter 4 is where all those chords were explained. And then chapter 5 puts the chords together. And then over the course of the next month or 2, we're just going to be redigesting all that material and constituting it into contexts. So those
Perfect.
fundamentals, if you can go back and review that stuff, and take it away from the textbook, go to YouTube and also to musictheory.net, where there's a whole bunch of wonderful tutorials that are designed for review for students that are trying to fill in potholes as they're beginning to proceed through their music theory curriculum.
All right,
Yeah,
will do.
I think you'll
Thank
be
you.
a strong student if you do those things.
Got it.
Good
Thank you very
luck.
much. Have a nice weekend.
Long weekend. Okay, take
Yeah.
care. Go Vikes!